Improving stalking laws is central to Just Stalking Resources' mission. Executive Director Turquoise Williams, Board President Margo Williams, and other experts joined Maryland State Senator Jeff Waldstreicher speaking regarding Senate Bill 743, Protective Orders, Crimes of Violence, and Stalking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As my panel gets settled here, this bill has to do with stalking and how that can fall in a hole within our protective order and peace order scheme that we have in the state of Maryland. So many of you know from being on this committee or sitting on the Judiciary Committee before us that the protective order is traditionally used for intimate relationships or family relationships, some type of close relationship, and it has its own benefits that come with that. Included in that is the length of the protective order, and a path to permanency in the protective order. And also because people are living sometimes in the same place or close together, the protective order has protections when it comes to the removal of weapons from the home. The peace order is separate. The peace order is for neighbor disputes. So you get in a fight with your neighbor over, cutting the grass, and then so you wouldn't be eligible for a protective order. You're not in an intimate relationship. You go for a peace order that has some fewer protections because it's not an intimate relationship. Stalking is a challenging crime to fall into one of these two categories. 40% of stalking is intimate partner stalking, meaning someone with whom you previously had an intimate relationship. But 60% of stalking is from strangers, complete strangers. But the nature of stalking more closely aligns with some of the things that we have in the protective order. In other words, they're strangers, just like a peace order would indicate. But the nature of the stalking, getting messages and getting pictures and having people show up at your home and texting you, has more of the intimacy, even though there's no sexual relationship, of the protective order. And so what we're trying to do in this bill is find a place to put the stalking protective status in a way that works with both the peace order and the protective order. So how does this work? What we would do would be to extend to stalking some of the benefits that you get in the protective order. You would start with a longer length of the protective order. There would be a path to permanency in that protective order. And you would have the ability to remove weapons because of the danger of weapons when it comes to stalking. The way the bill came in, it essentially puts stalking into the protective order. It's not particularly relevant to me where the protections go, just that we have these protections. And the consensus among the advocates that we've been discussing is that it's more appropriately placed in the peace order. And so there will be a sponsor amendment that essentially takes our bill and puts it over on the peace order side. Again, the structure is less relevant than that we provide these protections to stalking victims. And you'll hear from one who has a very serious case. And in fact, if she'll go next. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a favorable report.
She can go next.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide information relevant to SB 743. My name is Margo Williams, and I am president of the Board of Directors of Just Stalking Maryland Resources and a parent of a stalking victim of 15 years. Senate Bill 743 is predicated on the premise that the alleged perpetrator will not only be convicted of stalking, but receive the maximum 5-year penalty and have served at least one of those years. In fact, only about 12% of all cases are prosecuted. Of that 12%, only 6.5% result in conviction. And of that 6.5%, only 4.1% result in jail time. So if only 6.5% of stalking cases end in conviction and only 4.1% serve jail time, how will this bill help the other 96% of stalking victims whose alleged stalkers may have been convicted for different crimes associated with the stalking, but weren't convicted of the stalking? The problem may be in the limitation of the Maryland state stalking law to very narrow definitions of intent, reasonable, and fear of serious bodily injury or death. Apparently, though, other concerned or anxious victims aren't being heard. For instance, with intimacy-seeking acquaintance stalkers with no history of intimate or domestic relationship, the danger of physical harm to the primary victim is small, only about 5.4%. But the persistence is significant, with 32% lasting past 1 year, even decades. According to the 2019 National Stalking Victimization Survey, victims of both traditional and electronic stalking are actually more fearful of someone close to them being harmed, or losing their jobs, or losing their social networks, peers, friends, or freedom, of the behaviors never stopping, not knowing what would happen next, or losing their mind. These are all fears which could be mitigated by a long-term protective order or even permanent order. Thank you.
Chair Smith and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide information relevant to SB 743. My name is Turquoise Williams, and I'm the Executive Director of Just Stalking Maryland Resources and a stalking victim for 15 years. We want to highlight some of the barriers and gaps in the proposed legislation. It does not specifically provide for nor outline a pathway to obtain a permanent relief needed to those experiencing persistent or recurrent stalking. Acquaintance stalkers are 42% more likely to persist longer than 1 year, with findings as great as 40 to 80 years. Recurrent stalking victims are 38% more likely to recur. Upgrading to a permanent order is still upgrading to a permanent order may still require meeting eligibility based on intimacy or shared residence. Over 50% of us stalking victims changed our jobs or retired early. Lifetime's costs are approximately $140,000 for women and $23,000 for men. The added cost of a peace order, including $46 for court fees and $40 for service fees, despite using ourselves as bait and involving friends 4 states away, whereas protective orders are free, is left unaddressed. As a victim of an acquaintance stalker, it may be unknowable to us if the perpetrator owns a firearm. There is no clarity on how the policy will be enforced, if and when firearms are involved. If they have an HQL, they may be able to obtain another one. Peace order status should be listed as disqualifying respondents from eligibility from purchasing a firearm. Peace, unlike protective orders, can be obtained only in district court during business hours. My alleged stalker resumed their behavior at night. I was unable to get notice about their release from incarceration. Protective orders are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from district, circuit, and other locations, and court appearances can be virtual. This is left unresolved. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on SB 743. I hope you consider this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Here in support of Senate Bill 743 with amendments. I'd like to thank Senator Waldstreicher for bringing this bill and for working with us so closely on the amendments. We agree that stalking, stranger stalking, intimate partner stalking, and stalking by people who you don't even know is an incredibly serious issue. However, this bill as drafted has the protections in the protective order statute, and we believe that it belongs in the peace order statute, and that is what the amendments would do. It would also do a few other things. It would extend the length of the peace order, and it would provide a path to permanent peace orders, as well as include discretionary removal of firearms upon certain factors being proven. In addition, it would improve the path to a permanent protective order for those that are eligible for a protective order. When I saw this bill, took the time to look at every other state to see how they handled it for stalking. I looked at 37 states that have specific civil orders directly related to stalking. Maryland is incredibly out of line in terms of its duration, in terms of its protections, and the discretionary removal of firearms. So the 6 months, there was only one other state, and it was a combined order, and it involved child custody. So it was totally incomparable to what we have here. So we believe that the protections that the amendment would offer would benefit both victims of stranger stalking as well as those of intimate partner violence, and we urge a favorable report with those amendments.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Lisa Jordan with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We're also here in support of the Senate Bill 743 with amendments. You know, protective orders, as you've heard, really are the first line of defense for intimate partner violence. But I do want to point out that it's not just for intimate partner violence. It's also for sexual assault cases. Non-intimate partner sexual violence cases moved from the peace order to the protective order several years ago because of some of the things you've already heard about. They're longer, they're generally viewed as more serious. There are other forms of relief that flow from the protective order statute itself. As you've already heard, Senate Bill 743 does two things. It moves stalking similar to how non-intimate partner sexual assault was moved. And MCASA honestly views this as perfectly reasonable. It is a reasonable option. The U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Violence Against Women generally has jurisdiction over domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and of those 60% of non-intimate partner stalking cases, a lot of them want to be intimate with the victim. So it kind of fits, but it also fits in the peace order statute. So if the committee desires to put it there, that is also a perfectly reasonable option. The second thing, though, I really do want to highlight, and that is that it would expand the availability of permanent protective orders. This is really sorely needed. It's an important change in our statute to be able to have ongoing protection. There is a kind of a drafting error in the bill. It refers to crimes of violence in the criminal law article that would inadvertently take out assault too, which is really important, right? That's lots of the intimate partner violence cases. So we ask either that you switch to public safety or that you specifically include assault to permanent protective orders. For those reasons, we ask for a favorable report of Senate Bill 743 with amendments.
Questions from the committee? All right, with that, thank you all very much. We'll be in touch to work some of this out.
Mr. Chair, if I'm not out of line, I believe Ms. Feinstein is desperately waiting in the waiting room.
Yes, and yes, and Ms. Cross. So Ms. Feinstein, we'll go with you first, and then we'll go with Ms. Cross next.
Thank you so much. My name is Debbie Feinstein. I'm Chief of the Special Victims Division for the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. Good afternoon to Chair Smith, to sponsor Vice Chair Waldstreicher. The issuance of a protective or a peace order is not directly in the lane of the State's Attorney's Office. However, as I testified on other bills, the incidence of stalking and the nexus to other types of crimes, particularly homicides, is of great concern to the state. Anecdotally, we've handled a lot of stalking cases, both intimate partner and non-intimate partner. And in some of the non-intimate partner cases, the stalking, as we just heard described by Ms. Williams, can go on for years and years and years. And the recourse that's being suggested now, either putting this non-intimate partner stalking into the protective order bill, or protective order statute, or the peace order statute, makes a lot of sense, because the duration of 6 months that's available under the current peace order scheme is simply not enough time and not enough protection for these serious cases of non-intimate partner stalking. And so we would advocate for either option, putting it in the protective order or putting it in the peace order statute. Certainly hearing what my colleagues and advocates have to say with respect to the proper placement of this. I would also concur with what was just said by Ms. Jordan regarding the need to update and change the protective order, the permanent element of the protective order, and broadening it to include crimes of violence as defined under the public safety article, which would include assault in the second degree. For all those reasons, we would urge support. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to go on to Ms. Cross, then we'll take questions from the virtual panel. Ms. Cross, you're up.
Thank you so much. I do testify favorably in response to Senate Bill 743. This protective order is something that's necessary. Stalking is actually a debilitating action. When you are being stalked, and trust, many of us that have unfortunately been miscategorized as weak has had this opportunity to be stalked, and it's not fun. You cannot answer enough emails. You cannot put enough into the trash box. Those things are very debilitating, not only to your work life, receiving nude pictures at work, receiving things that could get you fired from your job. I adamantly request that you push a favorable on this. I have worked with Patricia Weiss and Connect to Protect and We Model USA, where they bring fashion to the world of protection of not just women, but men and children as well. They're bringing the mission and the vision of highlighting that it's not just a victimless crime anymore. When you are socially and with social media and all of the media aspects of our lives, from paying bills, all these threats are criminal. When you look at Cyber Command addressing criminal issues on the network, you get a Trojan, it tears your entire system up. You get a virus, it tears your entire paying bills system up, which can throw everything in your life into a vicious cycle. I urge you to favorably agree to make Senate Bill 743 law. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, that'll end the hearing for Senate Bill 743.
To support this legislation, call your Maryland State Senator and District Delegates to endorse House Bill 745 and Senate Bill 743 with amendment. You can learn more about this process on juststalkingmdresources.org under Advocacy. To watch me and other experts testify in support of similar legislation being considered by the House Judiciary Committee, click the video on the left. To watch Maryland Delegate Emily Shetty speak about the importance of new stalking laws at our launch party, click the video on the right. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Please stay safe.